Thanks to Eternals, we have a whole new avenue of comic characters who could spring up within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. With decades worth of comics under their belts, there are a ton of Eternals on the page that could pretty easily make their way to the big screen, either in an Eternals sequel or some other future Marvel movie. So in this video, I figured I would take a look at some of the most likely, or at the very least the most interesting Eternals that we have yet to see, who could make their way into the MCU proper. Oh, also this video might contain minor spoilers for Eternals, so you've been warned. So sit back and relax and let's go ahead and dive right into it. So with Blade having made his pseudo debut as a faceless voice during the end credits scene in Eternals, there is an opportunity here to introduce other vampire-related characters alongside Eternals. And there is one that would fit the bill pretty handedly. Well, okay, kind of. There is an Eternal in the comics who made a living for himself as a professional wrestler, going by the name El Vampiro, or the Vampire. And he was a dang good wrestler too, going undefeated for most of his career, until he entered the ring against a guy going by El Toro Rojo. Now this guy was actually a deviant, which as you know is kind of an issue for Eternals. So the two rumbled, and their fight ended with El Toro Rojo goring Vampiro with his horns. Ouch. With the help of Thor though, Vampiro was able to get away from him, so he's still out there in the comics. Now, Vampiro isn't an actual vampire, though he does have the fangs to match, but he could serve as a direct connection between Blade and the Eternals. Heck, with the MCU's penchant for tweaking things to fit their plans, they could come up with some explanation that connects him to actual vampires, like saying that Vampiro is the genetic ancestor of modern vampires or something like that. Just kind of spitballing here. They'll probably come up with something better than that. At least I'd hope so. Now here we have Virako. This guy isn't exactly the most likely of all the Eternals to pop up, as he wasn't really that big of a character in the comics, but he could serve as a serious connection between the Eternals and a major member of the Avengers. See, in the past, Virako, along with 3 other Eternals, Ajak, Druig, and Vulcan, got quite buddy-buddy with a certain Asgardian god of thunder, while out on an adventure. So having him pop up in the modern day could be a good excuse to bring Thor into a future Eternal sequel, bringing the crew closer to the main MCU throughline. And his power set would come in handy, as Ikaris' father, having another laser vision flying dude around would be kinda nice, especially if Ikaris actually did go out when he flew himself into the sun. Likelihood of this happening though, not high. But hey, you never know with Marvel. Here's an entry that gets a bit deeper into the ancient lore of the Eternals that could also serve as a pretty solid catalyst for a future plotline. Kronos, along with his brother Uranos, were among some of the first Eternals to ever come into existence, and served as some of the first members of the ruling class. However, the two brothers didn't see eye to eye on how to rule their people, and as such, war broke out. Turns out, Uranos was a lot more focused on war and conquest, and wanted to seek control through strength. However, despite his warring ways, Kronos' forces ultimately came out on top. And so, Uranos and his followers were exiled into space. Fast forward a few millennia, where Kronos was working on some experiments with cosmic energy in a laboratory on Earth, when a freak explosion atomized him, seemingly ending his life. However, what actually happened was that he ascended, becoming a godlike being, one with the universe and time itself. With the MCU pushing further and further outside of the boundaries of planet Earth, and out across not just the cosmos but the multiverse as a whole, it could be a good idea to keep bringing in more cosmic deities. And with Kronos' direct connection to the Eternals, a sequel that touches upon his conflict with Uranos could lay the groundwork for an even larger story. Plus, you can't really ignore his connection to Thanos, since, fun fact, he's technically the Mad Titan's grandfather. Speaking of Thanos, I would be remiss to not bring up his father on this list. Alars, aka Mentor, was one of 2 sons of Kronos. Like his father, he was passionate about science and the pursuit of the betterment of his people. However, after his father died, Alars and his brother, Zurus, started to disagree on the future of their people. Zurus, along with a majority of Eternals, believed that they shouldn't mess around with things, and that no new Eternals should ever be created. Alars, however, believed that there was merit to the pursuit of reproduction, through either biological or mechanical means. Yet again, another war broke out between Eternals, with Alars eventually taking to the stars in search of the last survivor of the followers of Uranos, which he found on Titan. You know what happened next. They had a couple of kids, one of whom would go on to become the most monstrous tyrant in the history of the MCU. You know, the big purple guy. With his other son, Eros, popping up at the end of Eternals, it could be a good way to bring in Alars, a character who is still alive within the comics, despite Thanos' better efforts, honestly. It could give us a new perspective on the Mad Titan's tragic upbringing, and would go along nicely if they brought in Kronos as well. Just one big happy family reunion, as it were. Here's a fun little fact for you. There are more Eternals out there than just the ones created based off of humans. In actuality, there are Eternal versions of a lot of different races out across the cosmos, such as Ardkon, aka Ultimos, a Kree Eternal. You know, the blue people from Guardians and Captain Marvel, the race that Ronan the Accuser is. Ultimos was part of a group of Kree Eternals who came to Earth roughly 4,000 years ago. After being mistaken for gods by the Celts, most of the Kree Eternals left, except for Ultimos, who remained on the planet for millennia. After eventually facing off against Thor, Ultimos escaped into space, searching for his long-lost people. However, he was unable to locate them, as they had all gone extinct long ago. Instead, he joined up with the modern Kree and became a member of the Kree Star Force. Now, this is a situation where it could be cool to see an Eternal in a non-Eternal film, as Ultimos could serve as a pretty serious villain for the Marvels, the sequel to Captain Marvel. With Carol Danvers probably not exactly the Kree's best friend, it would make sense that they would want to send out their best, most powerful member to take her on. And since the film is going to feature 3 heroes, they'll need a big threat to really up the stakes. To me, Ultimos fits this bill perfectly. That all being said, if you're gonna introduce a Kree Eternal into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you've gotta include one from their shape-changing counterparts, the Skrulls. Kly'Bn, which is my best guess at how you pronounce that, is the last of the Skrull Eternals. Millions of years ago, the Celestials' experiments on the planet of Kronos produced 3 different forms of Skrulls. The Deviants, who were capable of shape-shifting, the Eternals, who were immortal, and the normal Skrulls, who were basically just green-skinned humans. The Deviants, who believed themselves to be the superior form of Skrull, used their shape-changing abilities to destroy all members of the other 2 races, becoming the dominant form of Skrulls, and the ones that we know as part of the larger Marvel Universe. So yeah, every Skrull that is alive today is a Deviant. I'm sure the Eternals just love that. However, Kly'Bn managed to convince their leader to spare his life, and the 2 of them teamed up, becoming revered as gods among the Skrulls. So what would an MCU version of Kly'Bn look like? What purpose would he serve? Well, it could be that he could be the key to truly freeing the Skrulls from the Kree. Since Captain Marvel revealed that, unlike in the comics, the Skrulls are actually the good guys in this universe, perhaps Kly'Bn could be the leader the Skrulls need to help find their new home among the stars. Or maybe he could be brought in to help in the fight against Ultimos if he were to wind up being the big bad of Marvels. Get ourselves a good old Eternal on Eternal battle royale going. I'd be down for that. Could be cool to see. Now, if we really want to get crazy and lean hard into the whole multiverse thing, we could see them bring in a version of Hyperion. Hyperion is a member of the Squadron Supreme from an alternate version of the Marvel Universe that is much closer in appearance to that of the DC Universe, with Squadron Supreme filling the role of the Justice League on that version of Earth. Hyperion is basically this world's analog for Superman, and in some versions of his comic origin, it is revealed that he is the last surviving member of his planet's Eternals, which would make sense. I mean, what is Icarus if not a sort of pseudo knockoff of Superman to begin with? Could see them bringing in the more villainous versions of the Squadron Supreme to fight with the MCU's Avengers, which is probably about as close as we're ever gonna get to a Marvel vs. DC movie. Sorry to break it to you, but that's just not gonna happen. This could very well be a possibility if the Doctor Strange sequel, Multiverse of Madness, mucks with the multiverse as much as we all think it's going to. Now, Hyperion is yet another fairly unlikely option. but you cannot tell me that it wouldn't be super cool to see Hyperion make an appearance on the big screen. Hey there everybody, I'm John Aljets. I made this video, and I want to know what you think. Are there any Eternals from the comics that you'd like to see in the MCU? Let me know in the comments below, or go ahead and shoot me a response over on Twitter. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe to CBR for more great videos just like this in the future.